The Luther Grand Hotel rises 40 stories above Midtown Manhattan, all glass and calculated grandeur, built to make everyone outside it feel the distance. Chloe Raymond has felt that distance exactly once in her life. She was 16 years old, sitting in a glass-walled office on the 32nd floor, watching a man in a bespoke suit slide a document across mahogany and tell her, with the quiet efficiency of someone closing an underperforming account, that her existence was a structural inconvenience his dynasty could not sustain. She signed the document. She did not know it was legally worthless. That was 12 years ago. The car slows now, 60 seconds from the hotel entrance, and Chloe opens the silk clutch in her lap. She does not do it to check her reflection, but to check the documents. Not just the acquisition papers. David has those already filed and sitting in the inboxes of every Luther Luxury Group board member since yesterday afternoon. She is checking the other one, the original non-disclosure agreement. The one Harrison Luther's own legal team has now certified was signed by a minor and is therefore categorically, irrevocably void. She folds it back and closes the clutch. Her phone lights up with a message from a number she saved 3 days ago under a single name, Clara. He knows about the acquisitions. Go anyway. Chloe reads it twice, then looks up. The hotel entrance is visible now through the rain-blurred window. Doormen stand at their posts, and a red carpet lies wet and gleaming under camera lights. Inside, 400 guests are seated. The Luther Luxury Group board fills the first 2 rows. 3 television cameras line the south wall. Harrison Luther stands at the podium, silver-haired and immaculate, maintaining the posture of a man who has never lost a public moment in 40 years. He is preparing to make the announcement he believes will neutralize the most dangerous variable his dynasty has ever produced. He sent her an invitation, not out of love, but out of strategy. He found Sterling & Company's paper trail 3 weeks ago, traced the quiet corporate acquisitions back to a woman with his blood and his enemy's surname, and made the only move he thought was left: absorb her publicly, announce her as the heir, and let the room read it as a reconciliation before she can frame it as anything else. Harrison Luther has always believed he controls the ending. He has never met anyone who spent 12 years studying exactly how he does it. The car door opens to cold air and wet pavement. Camera flashes erupt in the distance for someone else, though not yet for her. Chloe steps out. She does not look up at the building. She stopped needing to do that a long time ago. She walked in at 16 with nothing and left with less. She is walking in now with everything. The weapons that matter tonight are already in her hand. He thought the invitation was the trap. He had no idea it was the last mistake he would ever make in this building. The office is 32 floors above Manhattan on a Tuesday in October. Chloe is 16 and wearing the only blazer she owns, navy, secondhand, with 1 button missing on the left cuff. She noticed it on the subway and spent the rest of the ride holding her wrist tightly against her side so no one could see. Harrison Luther does not stand when she enters. That would imply equal footing. His attorney sits by the window with the careful neutrality of a man paid to witness, not to feel. The desk between them is mahogany and very wide, designed entirely to communicate, without saying a word, that the person on the other side of it matters less. Harrison explains, without raising his voice and without once using the word daughter, that her existence creates a reputational complexity his dynasty cannot accommodate. He uses clinical phrases like going forward, mutual benefit, and a clean resolution. He slides the NDA across the desk, his expression remaining completely unchanged while he waits for her to read it. She does not read it. She is 16 and does not know yet that she should. Through the frosted glass panel of the hallway, she can see her mother, Evelyn Sterling, standing perfectly still against the opposite wall with her hands clasped. She isn't fighting. Chloe understands, in the specific, wordless way children understand things they're not ready to face, that her mother already knows this is how it ends. She has known for longer than today. Chloe picks up the pen and signs her name. Not Luther. She was never given that. She signs Raymond, her grandmother's name. It belonged to the one woman in her family who ever sat across from her at a kitchen table and said, without occasion or condition. You are going to be someone, Chloe. I already know it. She sets the pen down and stands. Harrison says something, but she does not hear it. She is already walking toward the door, past the attorney, past the window, and past her own reflection in the glass. In the hallway, her mother reaches for her arm, but Chloe does not stop. It is not out of anger. She simply does not have anything left to stand still for. In the elevator, the doors close on her reflection, and she looks at herself for the full 32 floors down. She stares at the blazer with the missing button, the unsigned future, and the name she just used as a signature on a document she didn't read. She makes herself one promise. She does not say it out loud, because she doesn't need to. She will never again sit in a room where someone else controls the ending. The lobby doors open. Manhattan receives her without ceremony, the way it receives everyone, indifferently, abundantly, completely. She walks into it and does not look back. She has 12 years of work to start. Rachel Mercer's couch is narrow and slightly broken on the left side, yet is the most generous thing anyone has ever offered Chloe without being asked. Rachel does not ask questions. She simply makes coffee in the mornings, leaves it on the counter, goes to class, and trusts Chloe to figure out the rest. That quiet, unconditional trust is something Chloe files away carefully next to all the other things she is learning about what people are truly worth. She works nights at a hotel front desk for 7 months, then takes a runner position at a boutique fashion house in the Garment district. Her official job is delivering coffee, but her real job, the one nobody assigned her, is memorization. She reads every supplier invoice she is sent to collect and studies every production schedule pinned to the studio wall. She learns the vast gap between what fabric costs and what beauty is worth, realizing that the gap is where everything interesting lies. She takes a business course on weeknights at the City College 3 blocks from Rachel's apartment, paying semester by semester in cash and sitting in the back row with her notebook open before the professor even arrives. At 22, she launches Sterling & Company. She chooses her mother's surname deliberately, a tribute and a declaration folded into a single word. The studio is a converted storage room with 2 sewing machines, a dress form, and a borrowed camera. She photographs the first collection herself against a white wall, using a phone propped on a stack of textbooks. The industry does not notice her for 8 months. Then her second collection earns a single line in Business of Fashion, a quietly assured debut. Chloe reads it standing at her kitchen counter at midnight and lets herself feel the victory for exactly 45 seconds before opening her notebook to the next page. Then, her third collection sells out in under 9 minutes. Then Vogue calls. She answers on the second ring, having been ready for this call since she was 16 years old in an elevator, watching the lobby rise to meet her. She gets the September cover. It features her face and her name, Raymond, and underneath it, 3 words the photographer's assistant suggested and Chloe approved without hesitation. Built from nothing. Rachel texts her a photo of the magazine from newsstand in Brooklyn with no words, just the image. Chloe saves it, closes her phone, and goes straight back to work. She has 10 more years of building to do, and she has not yet touched what she is really here to construct. By 26, Sterling & Company has showrooms in New York, Milan, and Tokyo. By 28, Chloe has quietly acquired 3 landmark luxury properties through a holding company 4 layers deep, registered under a name no one in Harrison Luther's world would think to look for, Raymond Holdings. The first acquisition is a boutique hotel in the West Village, undervalued, underperforming, and sitting on a block that 3 separate urban development reports have identified as the next significant luxury corridor. She buys it on a Tuesday, and it turns a profit within 14 months. The second is a commercial property in Mayfair. She buys it from a seller in distress and spends 11 months restoring it without changing the facade, because she understands that the most powerful renovations are the ones that look, from the outside, like nothing changed at all. The third is different. The third is not about profit. The third is a controlling interest in the cornerstone asset underpinning Clara Luther's proposed corporate merger. The massive deal Harrison Luther has spent 8 months engineering, the one he intends to place at the center of his Heir announcement at the annual Gala. It is a deal that cannot close without this asset, and one that dissolves completely if the asset is held by someone else. Chloe buys it on a Friday afternoon in March. David Kincaid sends the confirmation at 4:47 p.m. She reads it at her kitchen table, sets her phone face down, and looks out the window for a long time. She is not angry. She has not been angry for years. Anger requires you to still be surprised, and she has not been surprised by Harrison Luther since she was 16 years old, watching her mother stand in a hallway and say nothing. She's simply ready. Nobody in the Luther luxury group has made the connection. Sterling & Company is a fashion house, and a profile of the brand in the Financial Times last spring described it as one of the most quietly powerful independent luxury companies in the world. Harrison Luther does not read fashion profiles. That is his oversight, and it will cost him everything. Chloe closes her laptop. She has one more thing left to acquire. Not a property, nor an asset, but a room. A room 40 stories above Midtown Manhattan, full of board members, cameras, and 400 people who have spent their careers believing Harrison Luther controls what they know. She is finally ready to give them something he never planned for, the truth. Julian calls on a Wednesday morning, his voice as smooth as a press release and carrying the particular warmth of someone who only ever reaches out when he needs something moved. He does not say her name like a half-sister's name. He says it like an opening corporate bid. He explains, with the patient clarity of a man who has rehearsed his lines, that the gala is in 3 weeks and Harrison is planning to announce Clara as the sole heir. This move would effectively close the door on any restructuring of the Luther Luxury Group's leadership for the next decade, and Chloe's presence at the event, simply her presence, nothing more, would complicate things considerably for everyone involved. He makes it sound generous, as if he is doing her a favor. She gives him 40 seconds before she hangs up on him. She sits quietly for a moment, phone still in her hand, thinking not about Julian, but about the structure of what he just described. A gala, an announcement, a room full of the most powerful people in New York, assembled to watch Harrison Luther hand his dynasty to the child he chose. 4 days later, a sealed envelope arrives by private courier. It features cream paper and an embossed letterhead displaying Luther Luxury Group in a typeface that has not changed in 30 years. It is a formal invitation. Her name is typed in full, Ms. Chloe Raymond, with no acknowledgement of what that name means to the man who signed it. Harrison found the paper trail. He knows about Sterling & Company and Raymond Holdings. He is making the only countermove he thinks is left. Absorb her publicly, announce her as an heir, reframe her 12 years of independent work as his own legacy, and let the room read it as an act of patriarchal grace. Chloe reads the invitation twice, folds it precisely along its original crease, and sets it on the desk beside her coffee. Then she calls David Kincaid. File everything today, she instructs. Every acquisition registered before the end of the week. I want the board officially notified at market close. David does not ask why. He never does. Next, she calls Anthony Thorne. For weeks, she tells him, I need a gown. Not beautiful, undeniable. Build me something that looks like someone who has already decided. There is a brief silence on the line. The particular silence of a man whose creative imagination has just ignited. For weeks, Anthony responds, I'll need the studio cleared. Clear it, she says, and hangs up. She looks at the invitation one more time. Harrison Luther sent it thinking it was the trap, firmly believing that control of the room means control of the ending. He has never met anyone who spent 12 years studying exactly how he wins, and who built a winning countermove stitch by stitch, corporate acquisition by corporate acquisition, long before he even realized the game had started. Anthony Thorne clears his entire schedule the morning after Chloe calls. His assistant arrives to find a whiteboard wiped clean, 3 bolts of uncut fabric on the central table, and Anthony standing in the middle of the studio in yesterday's clothes with a cup of cold coffee and the expression of a man who has not slept because he cannot stop thinking. The brief is only 2 sentences long. Antony has been Chloe's head designer for 6 years and has learned that she never uses a word she doesn't mean, nor does she mean anything she doesn't intend to follow through on. He reads the brief once, pins it to the board, and does not look at it again. It has already settled somewhere behind his eyes where his best work originates. He works for 26 days. He chooses deep garnet silk instead of black, avoiding the expected choice, because Chloe Raymond has never in her professional life made the expected choice, and he will not start now. The foundation is structured and boned, because beauty without architecture eventually collapses, and the woman this gown is built for will not collapse. The silhouette forms a single unbroken line from collarbone to floor, leaving one shoulder bare while the other is covered in hand-placed rubies that follow no mathematical pattern. Antony calls them irreducible in his private notes, because some things successfully resist being categorized, and that is precisely where their power lies. There are no crystals, no constellation motifs, and no sentiments sewn into the fabric. There's only pure structure and the specific gravity of something built entirely to last. On the morning of the gala, Chloe stands before the full-length mirror in Antony's atelier, and neither of them speaks for close to 3 minutes. The city moves outside the windows while the studio remains heavy with quiet. Antony stands slightly behind her and to the left, watching her face rather than the gown, noticing the way she looks at it, not with vanity or triumph, but with something older and quieter, recognition. This is what it looks like, Antony says finally, his voice just above a whisper, when someone has already won. Chloe reaches up and straightens the shoulder seam by a fraction of an inch. Not because it needs it, but because the gesture is hers, the moment is hers, and she is allowed to take her time inside it. Good, she replies. Now he has to look at me. She turns from the mirror and picks up the silk clutch from the chair beside the door. Tucked safely inside, folded with the exact precision she applies to everything, lie the legal instruments of her retribution. Chloe's penthouse is quiet at 10 o'clock. Manhattan performs below, all light, motion, and the stage performance of importance, while she stands at the window with a glass of untouched wine and the original NDA in her hand. She reads her own signature, Chloe Raymond. It is the handwriting of a 16-year-old trying desperately to look composed. She has looked at this document dozens of times over the years, but she has never read it the way she reads it tonight, as a dead object that no longer holds any power over her. David's certification letter is paper-clipped to the back, featuring 3 precise paragraphs that conclude with a sentence she has fully memorized. This agreement, executed by a minor without independent legal counsel, is categorically unenforceable under applicable law, and is therefore void ab initio. Void from beginning. She folds it back along its crease. David calls at 10:52, and she answers before the second ring. Everything is filed and confirmed, he says without preamble, as he never begins any other way. The board received formal notification at market close. Harrison's legal team called at 7 p.m. A pause that carries weight. He knows you have the original. Good, she says. She wanted him to know. She wanted Harrison Luther to spend the night in the building where he made her invisible, knowing she was coming, and knowing she held the one document that makes every legal structure he built around her silence completely meaningless. She wanted him to lie awake in that 32nd floor office, understanding hours before she ever walked in that the ending he engineered was never going to hold. She sets the wine down, crosses the room, and stands in the doorway where the gown hangs waiting. Garnet silk, a single column of rubies, the most deliberate thing Antony has ever made. She looks at it for a long time without moving. Tomorrow is not a confrontation. It is a correction. It is a reality that should have happened 12 years ago in an office above this city, with an attorney present and a minor who deserved to be told she had a choice. She places the documents in her clutch and turns off the light. Tonight, she sleeps. She has been ready for tomorrow since she was 16 years old in an elevator, making a promise to no one but herself. She has kept it every single day. Tomorrow, she closes the loop. The ballroom doors open at exactly the right moment. Chloe times it perfectly from the lobby, 30 seconds after the applause from Harrison's opening welcome dies down, right when the room has completely resettled and every eye has returned to the podium. She has studied Harrison Luther's Gala format for 3 years. She knows he begins with 2 minutes of welcome, then transitions directly into his annual address. She knows the room will be at its most focused, its most still, and its most vulnerable to interruption at exactly the 30-second mark. The doors open, and she steps through. 400 people turn. The garnet gown does not shimmer the way crystal does. It burns low and steady, like something that has been building heat from the inside for a very long time. Chloe moves at the pace of someone who has nowhere to be, which, in a room full of performed urgency, is the most commanding speed available. She does not look at the crowd. She keeps her eyes locked on the podium. She is keenly aware of the room's response, moving through the crowd like shifting weather. Julian sees her from the left side of the room and goes completely still, the distinct stillness of a man frantically recalculating his position. Clara, sitting in the front row, does not flinch. She looks like someone who has been waiting. Victoria's hand closes around her bracelet, her knuckles turning white beneath her expensive rings. A glass is set down somewhere to Chloe's right, too carefully and too quietly, the way people lower objects when they suddenly need both hands free. And Harrison, he stops mid-sentence. He looks at his firstborn daughter for the first time in 12 years, and for 2 full seconds, 2 seconds that visibly cost him, he says absolutely nothing. Then 40 years of rigid discipline take over. He leans back into the microphone and smiles at the room with the complete ease of a man who has never lost a public moment and does not intend to start tonight. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says warmly, "I believe our guest of honor has arrived." The room turns back toward the podium, uncertain but resettling. Harrison has instantly reframed her dramatic entrance as part of his own choreography, controlling the narrative. Chloe walks down the aisle to her assigned seat in the 3rd row, the one Harrison's office reserved for her when they sent the invitation, deliberately placed within his grand arrangement. She sits, rests the clutch on her knee, and looks directly at the podium. He thinks he is still holding all the cards. She lets him think so. She can wait 8 more minutes. She has already waited 12 years. Harrison's announcement is everything he rehearsed it to be. He builds to it with the practiced patience of a master of theater. 3 minutes of industry reflection, 2 of legacy, and 1 of what he calls, with a precise and loaded pause, the future of this family. Then, he says her name, Chloe Raymond. Not Luther. He is too careful for that, too aware of the room's knowledge gaps. But Raymond, uttering it with the warmth of a man acknowledging something long overdue, as though the 12-year silence was simply life's timing and not a corporate banishment engineered in a glass office. He calls it a completion. He calls it strength. The room erupts in applause. Board members nod approvingly. Society correspondents type furiously, and 3 cameras hold steady on Harrison's face. He receives the moment with the exact expression of a man who planned it this way all along, because he did. In the 3rd row, Chloe stands up from her assigned seat. She lets the applause build to its absolute highest crescendo, and then she walks forward, cutting through the center aisle. The applause does not stop immediately. It fades note by note as people notice her deliberate movement, notice her direction, and realize she is not walking up to receive a crown. She is walking the way someone walks when they are about to say something that can never be unsaid. The room drops into an instinctual, breathless silence. She reaches the podium. She does not take the microphone from his hand. Instead, she opens her silk clutch, pulls out 2 documents, and sets them flat on the lectern directly in front of Harrison. She steps back 1 clean pace, so every camera in the room has an unobstructed line to his face and the papers lying before him. When she speaks, she looks at the room, completely bypassing him. When I was 16 years old, in an office on the 32nd floor of this building, I was handed the first document on that lectern and forced to sign my own silence. Her voice is entirely level, not loud, not shaking, but steady with the weight of an unshakable decision. I signed it because I was a child, because I didn't know I had a choice, and because my mother was standing in the hallway, having already been broken by the same system. The room remains completely paralyzed. Harrison Luther's own legal team certified yesterday that this non-disclosure agreement is void ab initio, signed by a minor, without independent counsel, and entirely under duress. But I am not here tonight to claim an inheritance. I am here to correct the record and to deliver a notice of my own. She glances down at the second stack of papers on the podium. The second document is a certified filing from Raymond Holdings. As of market close today, I hold the controlling interest in the cornerstone asset underpinning your proposed global merger. The deal cannot close without me, and I will never sign off on it. The merger is dead. Harrison, the dynasty you built on forced silence ends tonight. In the front row, Clara Luther rises slowly from her seat. She does not speak. She simply stands in solidarity, facing her father. The room understands instantly, without a single word, exactly what her defiance means. Harrison looks at his firstborn daughter, and for the first time in 40 years of public life, he has no sentence left to finish. The room does not erupt into chaos. It fractures from the inside out, quietly, the way massive structures fail when the foundation gives way. Dawn comes in pale, unhurried gold over Manhattan, and Chloe Raymond sits at her kitchen table with a coffee she has actually finished. It is a small detail, but it means everything to her. This habit she has carried for 12 long years of pouring coffee and completely forgetting it, letting it go cold while she worked through strategies in her head, never quite arriving in the morning. Today, she arrived. She sat down, drank the coffee while it was still warm, and watched the city light paint the skyline with the specific, uncomplicated quiet of someone who has finally put down a weight carried for a lifetime. Her phone has been buzzing continuously since midnight. She reads the breaking headlines without an ounce of urgency, the way you read the last page of a book whose ending you already know. Sterling and Company. Founder exposes Luther legacy at Gala. Raymond Holdings blocks multi-billion-dollar merger. Luther Luxury Group Board convenes emergency session. NDA signed by minor declared legally void. Her story. Her words. Her ending. David calls at 7:20 a.m., and she answers on the first ring. 3 board members have already reached out, he states without preamble. One wants to discuss transitioning certain legacy Luther Group assets under Sterling and Company management. One, through counsel, very carefully, wants to apologize. One simply wants to understand how you built an empire under their noses without anyone knowing. David delivers this in a tone Chloe recognizes, after 6 years of working together, as the absolute closest he ever comes to being deeply impressed. She thanks him, and she truly means it. At 8:30 a.m., Clara texts. It is not a long message, nor is it polished, just 7 raw words sent after what Chloe suspects was a sleepless night. I knew before last night. I'm sorry. Chloe reads it twice, searching the text for performance, corporate calculation, or the desperate pivot of a woman trying to protect her own position. She finds none. They are just 7 honest words from a half-sister who found a sealed document in her father's private files and sent an unauthorized text message warning her, breaking a lifetime of conditioning because it felt fundamentally wrong and she could not let a wrong thing stand. Chloe types back, I know you did. Come for coffee. At 9:05 a.m., Harrison calls. She looks at his name flashing on the screen for 3 full seconds, then sets the phone face down on the table and turns back to the window. She is not ready for that conversation yet. She may not be ready for a long time, or perhaps she will never want it all. But for the first time in 12 years, she is the one who decides when it happens, where it happens, and exactly what it will cost him to be heard. That is enough. For today, that is everything. She looks out at a city waking up beneath a gold-washed sky, a city that went to sleep last night, finally knowing her name. Raymond, her grandmother's name, the name she chose, kept, and built an empire under. She breathes slowly, taking it all the way in and letting it all the way out. She breathes out 16. She breathes out the navy blazer with the missing button, the trembling pen in her hand, and the oppressive silence of that 32nd floor hallway. She breathes out every past version of herself that had to fight and survive in order to become the woman standing here today. The NDA is void. The merger is broken. The record is corrected in front of 400 witnesses. She is at last entirely and completely free.